and welcome back to our English Literature virtual class. In our previous class, I had told you the story of Oliver Twist, and today we will read about the story The Secret Garden, written by Francis H. Burnett, and the characters of this play are Mary Lennox, who is a 10-year-old orphan girl, and she is the main character. The second character is Archibald Craven, who is the Mary's uncle. This person is Mary's uncle. And the third one is Martha Sowerby, who is the maid of the house. This is her uncle's house. And Ben Weatherstaff, who is the gardener of the secret garden. Now, this story was initially published in sections in the American magazine. The Secret Garden was released as a novel in 1911. As a child, her family faced many financial difficulties. She started tasting success in her career at a time when most women didn't have one. It was only when her son demanded her to write something for little children to read that she worked on her first major piece of story. After this, she went on to write two of her most famous stories, that is, The Secret Garden and A Little Princess, which was inspired by her childhood and love for gardening. Now, this is the story of a 10-year-old girl called Mary. And she was a disagreeable and spoiled girl who lived in England with her parents. She was not allowed much contact with her parents and was mostly brought up by servants who assisted their family. When an epidemic killed everyone in her family, she was left an orphan and placed under the guardianship of her wealthy uncle Archibald Craven. Craven lived in an isolated house on a moor. A moor is an area of land covered with rough grass. Mary moved to her uncle's huge mansion, which she disliked. She began to explore the gardens with the old gardener. One day, Mary chanced upon a locked gate that led to a secret garden. Seeing its deteriorating condition, Mary began to take care of it. However, a good-natured maid named Martha Sowerby told Mary about the secret garden on the grounds which remained locked. The novel shows the transitions that brought to her life and how access to the garden changes everyone's lives forever. This story is adapted as a play in your textbook. Let us find out how Mary went in search of the secret garden and met a friend on the way. So, as Mary finished her breakfast, Martha told her to go out and play in the garden. Mary went to the window and saw the moor in the distance, looked dull and cold. She did not want to go out on a cold day. Martha said that if she wanted, she could stay in the house also. Mary realized that Martha was right. There was nothing to do. Perhaps it would be better to go and see what the gardens were like. Martha showed her the way downstairs. She said that if she went round that way, she would reach the gardens. She pointed to the gate and hesitated, saying that one of the gardens was locked up. No one has been over there for 10 years. It was Mr. Craven's wife's garden. He had it shut when she died, and he won't let anyone to get inside. He locked the door and buried the key. Mary went down the path which led to the great gardens. She looked around at the trees and flower beds and a large pool with a grey fountain. But the flower beds were bare and the fountain was not working. Mary said to herself, I cannot help thinking about the garden which no one has been for 10 years. Are there any flowers still alive in it? How could a garden be shut up for so many days? Getting curious, right? As Mary walked along the path she was following, she saw a long wall with ivy growing over it. Ivy, it's a climbing plant or a creeper. That was not the closed garden, obviously, and she could go into it. She went through the door and saw another open green door, showing or containing winter vegetables. As she looked around her, an old man with a spade over his shoulder came in through the vegetable garden. He did not seem at all pleased to see her. Mary asked him whether she could go in the kitchen gardens or not. Ben said that. Ben was the gardener. There was nothing to see. Mary goes through the second door. There she found more walls and winter vegetables. But in the second wall, there was a closed green door. Perhaps it led into the secret garden. Mary turned the handle, hoping the door would not open, because she wanted to find the strange and interesting garden, but it opened quite easily, and she found herself in an orchard. Now, orchard is a piece of land where fruit trees are grown. There was no locked door to be seen anywhere. All she saw were the tops of trees above the wall, and when she stood still, she saw a bird with a bright red breast sitting on the topmost branch of them. And suddenly it began to sing its winter song. Mary stopped and listened to its cheerful, friendly little whistle. She listened to it until it flew away. Perhaps it lived in that mysterious garden. Mary was curious about it and wanted to see what it was like. Why had Mr. Archibald Craven buried the key? She walked back into the first kitchen garden and found the old man digging there. She stood beside him. He took no notice of her, and so at last she spoke to him. Mary said, "There was no door into the other garden." Ben rudely asked, "What garden?" "The one on the other side of the wall." "There were trees. I saw the tops of them. A bird with a red breast was sitting on one of them and it sang," said Mary. To her surprise, a smile was seen over the gardener's bad-tempered face. He began to whistle a slow, soft whistle. Almost the next moment, a wonderful thing happened. The bird with the red breast flew to them and landed near the gardener's foot. Ben laughed and said, "Here he is." The bird put his tiny head on one side and looked up at him with a soft right eye. It seemed quite familiar and was not afraid. Mary said, "Will it always come when you call it?" The gardener nodded. He began to talk more warmly before the bird. He told Mary how the bird was as friendly as a dog. It was so curious that he always came to see what the gardener planted. It was lonely when it left its nest and stayed to make friends there. Said Ben. The robin hopped about busily pecking the soil. Mary, looking at the robin, and said that she was lonely too. The gardener began to dig again. Mary asked his name. He said, "Ben Weatherstaff. I am lonely myself, except when the bird is with me." Mary said, "I have no friends at all. I never had. I never played with anyone." The robin again started singing. Ben laughed and said that the bird had made up his mind to make friendship with Mary. Mary looked excitedly at the bird. She looked excitedly at the bird, and Mary asked the robin whether it wanted to make friendship with her. But in that moment, the robin, who had ended the song, flew away over the wall into the garden where there is no door. Ben said that the bird lived there among the old rose trees. Mary asked excitedly, "Are there rose trees?" Ben ignored her and began to dig again. Mary said, "I should like to see them. There must be a door somewhere." Ben now looked as unfriendly as he had looked when she first saw him. Ben said that there was a door 10 years ago, but not now. Mary insisted, "There must be." Ben said that no one has found it. "I must go on with my work. Go and play." And he stopped digging, threw his spade over his shoulder, and walked off. Mary watched him going. She realized that if she wanted to know anything about the secret garden, she would have to find out on her own. Now with this, I must also end up here. Remain connected, children. Bye bye. See you. Take care.